Before I get into the meat of this video, I just want to come out and say that Bloodborne is one of my favorite games of all time. I've put a lot of hours into learning everything to do with the game, and even after 2 months without playing, I can still tell you where most of the items in the main game are. Now, I'm not trying to flex playtime or knowledge or anything like that, I just wanted to get this out of the way. I played the game, I've done a lot of PvP. I think with the amount of hours I put into it, I have some legitimate grounds to review the current state of the game. Now, with that out of the way, I just want to say that Bloodborne PvP had the most potential out of all of the Souls games. In fact, even though it has its flaws, I think it's one of the most interesting combat systems that From Software has introduced. Each weapon is unique. Well, I mean, most of them anyway. And with that comes a lot of different possibilities as far as playstyle and potential. For example, with just a single weapon like the Chikage, you can look at different players and see that while most people go for unzips and tricked R2s, they have different ways of putting these moves into motion. And every single time it's used in a unique way. No playstyle is better than the other, and that's the beauty of the game. Some players, like Hell Chose Me, have a more stylish flair, utilizing the fast pace of the game to create interesting kills and eye candy. Meanwhile, other players like Scorched Knight 95 and Astrichthyes have a deep knowledge of the game's mechanics and make it known through methodical usage of the tools they have on hand. And that's how the game kept me so entertained for so long. No matter how bad I was beaten or how bad I beat the other player, it was almost always an interesting fight. It felt good to know that if I walked into Nightmare Frontier or Murgo's Loft, I'd be met with something new. Until I wasn't. And so, this is how logging on to Bloodborne went from a bunch of people being super excited to get to fight each other, to me trying to go to Nightmare Frontier and other PvP players telling me not to do it, because it was just so bad. Before I express my own theories and speculations, I want to address the common issues that people have played on repeat since the release of the game. I'm not going to go too far into the netcode, because despite it being bad, for the most part, I've never had huge issues with lag, unless the other person has obvious connection problems, and it's not always that person's fault. The main issues I've heard from people trying to get into the game are gyms, blood gyms, and as much as I'd love to get into how broken gyms can be, I'm just going to say that these add an extra bit of struggle when creating a new build. Not only do you need to make sure your levels are correct, and that you have all your weapons at +10, you also need to get gems that boost your damage, and let me tell you, gems aren't easy to get. The RNG behind gems is rough, and getting the perfect gems you want takes a long time. And it's such a struggle even for experienced veterans. But you need to get gems. Why? Because, well, if you don't, you're going to get stomped, and that's that. Making it so that players who want to try the PvP for the first time are going to get absolutely demolished because they just can't keep up with the amount of damage the other players are doing. Because after 3 years, let's face it, there's not a lot of no-gym honor dueling going on in randoms. And let's just say the Bloodborne Reddit, the place where people are going to go in search of knowledge, isn't exactly helpful. So, let's step away from this one issue and just keep it as this. The game is uninviting to newer players. This is also on top of some other random issues, such as if you kill a boss, it despawns your Bell Maiden, making it so that you can't get invaded even in the hotspot areas, the bell system as a whole being flawed, and the fact that multiplayer wasn't even intended in the first place. This deterred a lot of potential players. So, the game has a smaller player base because of that. So what? It wasn't a huge issue before, so what changed? So now that we have acknowledged the fact that the game has a smaller player base, we can start to look at how it all went downhill. The game was a masterpiece. The PvP was fun and exciting. How did it all change? Well, the first step towards destruction was the PS4 save wizard, introducing hacked gyms, modified stats, etc. Now, hacking has never been something that breaks a game, and it never really will be, but this is just the first step, so hear me out. Once you look at how the issue was handled, you can see that it impacted the game's PvP scene in a negative way. In other Souls games, they implemented something known as a soft ban, a system that would only allow you to play against other players using hacks or cheats, if it detected you were using them. Bloodborne didn't, and doesn't, have a system like this in place because, well, it's a PS4 game. There's no way they could cheat. Right? Well, obviously, they figured out how to do it. The Bloodborne Reddit would ban you if you even mentioned cheating, and there was no way to stop them besides manually blocking each player, putting the burden on the community to create a list of all the players caught cheating. But the game went on. The players pushed past it and kept playing. Then, a few months later, the second step. On the 6th of March 2018, the game became free for PS Plus users, making the active player count shoot through the roof, for many different reasons. Newer players were experiencing the game for the first time, and experienced players were chasing them through the woods, trying to murder them. It was great, and everyone loved it, I think. Didn't really stop to ask. And then, it was over. Bloodborne was no longer free, but the people who had picked it up were starting to get invested in the game, and they wanted more out of it. So they started looking towards the PvP, and as I expressed previously, there aren't a huge amount of resources for newer players besides build guide videos, and though one of those is great, it doesn't really help people fully grasp the game. So what they did is ask other players. Great! They could ask experienced players how they felt, and they could learn the intricacies of Jimmy. No, Jimmy. Put down the saw spear, Jimmy. They actually just looked at what was winning, who was winning, and how they played. And despite other people winning with style, that was a no-go, because that meant effort. So, they found out they could win if they just built in the most cancerous way possible. Picked up the most broken weapons, and they learned that the majority of players were dueling around level 100 or 120. So naturally, they all leveled to about 150 or 175, which is the maximum level a BL 100 or a BL 120 respectively can invade. And with that, some people got tired and left. Some chose to fight the cancer with cancer. You know, they made over-leveled builds and broken weapons just like them so that they could show them who's boss, but you can't choose who you fight. So more people were being subjected to the torment of these builds, and eventually, more people left. You know, there are still good players out there who won't stoop to that level, but they are few and far between now. To those who are still out there, Godspeed, my friends. Godspeed. Now, with all of this said, I want to say that Bloodborne had potentially the best PvP in the Souls series. All in all, the reason I think it went downhill to where it is right now is because of the smaller player base. You can go to a random area and only fight 2 or 3 different people. This is what caused the petty issues that arose and caused the downfall of enjoyment. When all players do is play to win, that makes it hard for anyone to have fun. Now, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you didn't, go ahead and leave a dislike. But if you did, smash that fucking like button, and consider subscribing for future content. I'll leave a link to everyone's channel that I mentioned in the video down in the description, and I want to give a special shout out to Astrichthyes for helping edit the script for the video. So, let's move past this with fond memories of the game. I loved it, and I know a lot of other people did too. It took up a huge chunk of my life and I have no regrets. And I hope to see you all soon.